Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty fundamental, the anatomy of human relationships.
Yeah, it's a big one. We're looking at why our connections often feel, well, fragile today.
Exactly. And the goal here is really to find a shortcut,
Yeah.
to understand why things seem to be struggling.
And we're jumping straight in with maybe a controversial starting point from the source material.
Okay.
It argues that when you strip everything else away, there's one absolute rule. Without need, there is no relationship.
Wow, okay. That sounds really transactional, almost cynical, doesn't it? I mean, surely relationships evolve beyond just need, like mutual admiration or just selfless love.
Well, the sources acknowledge that evolution, but they insist the initial spark, the glue, has to be a recognized need. The moment that need disappears, the effort to maintain the connection often does too.
Ah.
Think about it even spiritually. The relationship between humanity and, say, the creator, it's framed as being based entirely on the human need. Our need for guidance, for meaning, for safety, not the creator's need for us.
Right. If you don't feel that need, the connection weakens. That's a powerful idea.
It really is.
And there's that story you mentioned, the anecdote that illustrates this perfectly when money enters the picture.
Yes, exactly. I spoke with this incredibly old man, over 110, from Zulfi. I asked him, who's the good person today? I kind of expected some nostalgic answer about the past,
Sure.
but he just said, everyone today is a good person. I was taken aback.
Yeah, that's surprising.
And his explanation was sobering. He said, as long as everyone has money, everyone is good. Essentially, financial independence removed the need for neighbors. You didn't have to rely on each other for survival anymore, so you didn't have to put up with the difficult relationships. Money replaced the need for connection.
Wow. The ultimate isolation
Mhm.
built on independence. So, okay, if our foundations are crumbling, we need to rebuild. The sources talk about 4 pillars, but we're focusing today on the 2 really core internal ones first.
That's right. The spiritual foundation and our relationship with ourselves. Let's start with pillar 1, that connection with a higher authority or the creator.
Okay, so how does the spiritual connection, translate practically? For everyone, regardless of their specific beliefs, how does it stabilize relationships here on Earth?
Well, it establishes a kind of ultimate moral compass, right?
Hmm.
A standard that's higher than just what society thinks or what feels good in the moment. We call it the vigilant witness concept.
The vigilant witness.
Yeah. If you're aware, truly aware, that a higher power is observing you, it fundamentally changes how you treat others. The interaction isn't just between you and, say, that annoying colleague.
Hmm.
It becomes a transaction with that ultimate judge.
Ah, okay. That completely reframes conflicts, doesn't it?
Hmm.
So seeing everyday struggles through that lens, expecting some kind of ultimate reward or justice, how does that actually change how you behave day to day?
It helps you manage the small stuff. The daily frustrations, the setbacks, they become, well, almost like crumbs, insignificant compared to the bigger picture. The rewards you hope for in the afterlife, or paradise, or just long-term peace.
Right?
And this perspective demands more than just fairness. It pushes towards forgiveness. There's this powerful guidance. Then pardon with generosity. The goal isn't just getting even, it's achieving a state of generous pardon. That's an internal win, no matter what the other person does.
An internal victory.
Okay.
So if the spiritual pillar sets the moral foundation, pillar 2 turns inward. It's about the relationship with the self. And you stressed this one is maybe the most critical.
Absolutely, because it dictates everything about how we show up in the world. A healthy relationship with yourself requires what the material calls a strong personality.
Okay.
I like the metaphor they use. You need a sword, a sheath, and a shield. The sword is your capacity for action, for defense. The sheath is your ability to control that, to restrain yourself. And the shield protects your boundaries.
An imbalance is the danger here.
Exactly. Sword without a sheath, that's aggression, violence. Sheath without a sword, that's often excessive niceness, being a doormat, which leads to weakness and, honestly, resentment down the line. You have to know how to protect your space.
That makes sense. And this links to the idea of self-marketing, right?
Yeah.
That we have to present ourselves effectively, but based on actual competence.
Yes, genuine competence is key. The more real skills, knowledge, abilities you have, the less dependent you are on others for validation or, basic needs.
Right.
And that, in turn, makes you more valuable, more indispensable in cooperative relationships. It becomes mutual. If you're always seen as needing something, people might start to avoid you.
Which brings us to authenticity. I think it was William James who said, when 2 people meet, there are actually 6 people present,
Mm.
who each person thinks they are, who the other person thinks they are and who they really are.
That's the one. And the gap between who you really are and the face you put on, that's the authenticity gap. When that gap is wide, the risk of shame, anxiety, even depression, it just skyrockets. It takes enormous energy to maintain a facade.
Yeah, I can see that. And we need to be really clear about how we see our own abilities. You broke this down into a spectrum: confidence, arrogance, and self-contempt.
Precision is vital here. So confidence is believing in a capability you actually have. Arrogance is believing in a capability you don't have. And then there's self-contempt, which is maybe the saddest one.
Yeah.
You have the capability, the skills are there, but you lack the belief, so you avoid opportunities, you sell yourself short.
That's a really useful distinction. And you mentioned something counterintuitive, too, that sometimes confidence actually stems from a kind of, well, ignorance.
Yeah, like young kids volunteering eagerly for something really hard on the radio, maybe. They haven't learned the limits yet. They jump in with enthusiasm because they don't fully grasp the difficulty.
They learn by doing.
Exactly. And learning those limits often requires feedback from others. Which brings us back to relationships. There's that saying, the believer is the mirror of his brother.
Right.
A wise person doesn't get angry and smash the mirror if they don't like the reflection. They use it. They use that feedback for correction, for improvement.
That demands a lot of self-awareness and humility.
Mhm.
Okay, so these pillars require significant internal work, but it feels like external forces are constantly undermining them. What is this industrial waste you mentioned that's polluting our ability to connect?
It's like when you adopt certain attractive ideas from another culture, you often get the whole package, right? You buy into one value, like freedom, but you might inadvertently import other things alongside it that aren't so healthy, like inhaling fumes you didn't realize were there, the waste of modern concepts.
Got it, like buying the lifestyle, not just the product. So let's unpack some of these destructive concepts. Individualism seems like a big one.
Huge. Freedom and individualism sound fantastic, of course. But the source material argues they come at a steep price. Security. Radical individualism often means rejecting family or community support because that support comes with expectations, with obligations, maybe conformity.
You lose the benefits if you won't play by the rules of the group.
Precisely. And the result? Often it's profound isolation. You celebrate your successes alone, maybe posting them online, and you suffer your failures and depressions alone too. You end up on this kind of social media island, looking for validation from strangers.
And coupled with that is relativism, this idea that there are no universal norms. If things like generosity or respect mean different things to different people, how can we ever build stable connections?
It makes things incredibly unpredictable.
Yeah.
You know, in one culture, hospitality might mean serving a huge feast, like a whole sheep. Today, with relativism, maybe it means letting guests cook their own burgers on your grill because that's seen as making them feel comfortable or free.
Right, no shared baseline.
Exactly. Without objective boundaries, how can I know what you expect? How can you know what I expect? Conflict becomes almost inevitable.
Okay, then add scientism and materialism, reducing people to numbers and focusing only on the outside.
Yes, reducing complex emotions to a scale. Rate your sadness 1 to 10. And materialism pushes us to obsess over appearances rather than substance. Think about weddings. People spend fortunes on the dress, the venue, the photos,
Furniture.
the furniture, exactly. But how much do they invest in understanding communication, commitment, the actual mechanics of a lifelong partnership? Very little, often. It's all surface, all body, not the soul of the relationship.
And that focus on the external leads to contractualism and dehumanization.
It certainly contributes. Relationships become purely transactional. I handle this bill, you handle that one, my duty ends there. Dehumanization creeps in through bureaucracy, through efficiency. Think about being a patient in a huge hospital or dealing with automated customer service.
You're just a number, a case file.
Exactly. You're processed through fast, repetitive tasks. There's often no room for the human story, for kindness beyond the bare minimum required by the contract or the procedure.
And the final piece of this erosion, planned obsolescence. Taking a manufacturing concept and applying it to people. Replace, don't repair.
It's the ultimate convenience prep, isn't it? It feels easier, faster, cleaner to just divorce or block someone on social media or ghost a friend than to actually sit down and have the hard conversation needed to repair the connection.
So we just consume relationships like cheap printers, use until they break, then toss them.
Pretty much. It fosters this cycle of high turnover, moving on as soon as things get tough, rather than building resilience and learning how to fix things.
Okay, that's a pretty bleak picture of the modern relationship landscape.
Yeah.
We desperately need some tools to navigate this, to mend things. Let's talk about the classifications and the repair strategies you outlined. There were 5 types.
Yes, quickly. Living, that's the healthy one. Nourished by kindness, mutual obligations. Sick, driven by blame avoidance, needs responsibility. Harmful, one-sided, demanding. Dead coexistence without connection. And attachment, which is actually unhealthy.
Let's pause on the dead one. How can a relationship be dead but still exist?
Think of it like roommates who barely speak but share space peacefully, or like living in a rental property, you do the basic upkeep, you pay the rent, but there's no real emotional investment, no deep connection, no major conflict either. It's just there.
But that's not natural long term.
The sources say no. Even Adam, supposedly alone in paradise, felt loneliness. A dead relationship usually needs some kind of jolt, either to revive it or to end it consciously.
Got it. And the most dangerous one, attachment, which often gets confused with love. What are the warning signs that it's crossed over into something unhealthy, almost like a mental illness?
Key signs are possessiveness, thinking about the person constantly when they're not there, and crucially sacrificing for them so they will love you back, not out of genuine affection.
Ah, the motivation is transactional, even if it looks selfless.
Exactly. You put the person on a pedestal, you make sacrifices like on an altar, and then you complain constantly, like in a hospital, when they don't meet your impossible expectations. It almost always ends in resentment and hostility when the other person inevitably pulls away.
Okay, so how do we fix these things? If the problem is self-contempt, having the skills, but not the belief.
2 main steps. First, actively recall past successes, compliments, evidence of your competence. Remind yourself it's real. Second, commit to small, gradual steps of self-improvement. Don't aim for huge, intimidating goals right away. Small wins build genuine confidence.
Makes sense. And for that really damaging attachment.
The advice is usually drastic. Complete severance. Cut all ties, get rid of the reminders, the gifts, the photos, avoid the places, the songs.
No, let's just be friends.
Usually not effectively. The attached person often thrives on the chase, on any scrap of attention. Maintaining contact tends to just feed the obsession and make things worse.
Right. Okay, one more crucial area before we move on. Cross-gender contact, especially at work or in modern life. How do the sources suggest navigating that?
They draw a very clear line between contact and relationship. Contact is defined as temporary, restricted, and purposeful, like a specific work project. A relationship involves repetitive, more versatile communication that goes beyond that strict context.
Yeah.
If mutual attraction develops in that relationship space, the argument is that the only healthy, honorable path forward, according to this framework, is to formalize the interest, typically meaning exploring the possibility of marriage. Anything else is seen as playing with fire, risking emotional entanglement and instability.
That's a very clear boundary. Okay, let's shift gears to consciousness. You mentioned how the speed of modern life works against wisdom. There was that puzzle.
Ah, yes, the finger puzzle. How many fingers on 2 hands? 10. Easy. How many fingers on 10 hands?
Most people jump to 100.
Right. But the answer is 50. 10 hands have 50 fingers. The speed, the automatic processing, leads to error. We need to consciously slow down, to be present, to be accurate, to gain wisdom. Fast isn't always smart.
And being conscious helps us manage our place in the social hierarchy, what you called the social number.
Exactly. Everyone's social number, their status or rank, changes depending on the context. Maturity is about accepting that fluctuation without getting upset.
Can you give us a quick personal example? When did your number suddenly drop?
Oh, easily. You could be leading a major presentation at work, feeling like the absolute expert, number one in the room. Then you get home and your spouse asks you to take out the garbage and suddenly you're just the garbage guy. Your rank plummets.
Right. Or the dentist telling a CEO to open wider.
Perfect example. The dentist is number one in that moment. At home, maybe they're just the person who buys the eggs. Accepting these shifts gracefully prevents a lot of unnecessary ego clashes.
And this applies to setting boundaries in relationships too. Like with a colleague, you want to keep at a professional distance.
Yes, you have to consciously manage the rank you assign them in your life. If you don't want a casual work relationship to become too deep or demanding, you actively lower its rank. You ration your investment. Maybe you answer only 1 out of every 3 calls or texts promptly. You limit the personal favors or sacrifices. If you treat everyone like they're your top priority, you'll burn out fast.
That requires deliberate effort. And related to holding your ground, you made a challenging point about needing enemies.
Well, perhaps not needing them, but accepting that having principles will inevitably create some friction. If you stand for something important, not everyone will agree with you. A person with zero friction might be a person who doesn't stand for much at all.
So don't seek conflict, but don't compromise core values just to be liked by everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, finally, let's circle back to that crucial space between an action and our reaction to it.
Yes, that space is interpretation. Our emotional response isn't triggered directly by what happens, but by the meaning we assign to it, by how we interpret it.
So the example of someone not calling back.
Right. You can interpret it as, they hate me, which makes you feel rejected and angry. Or you can interpret it as, they must be really busy, which allows you to feel understanding or even concerned. Choosing the more generous interpretation primarily benefits your peace of mind, not theirs.
It protects your own emotional state. The less generous interpretation just guarantees your own suffering.
Precisely. Malice or immaturity often defaults to the worst possible interpretation.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive really seems to boil down to taking personal responsibility, doesn't it? Even when you feel the other person is wrong.
It really does. The sources suggest wisdom means the wiser person steps up and takes responsibility for the state of the relationship, even if they didn't cause the initial problem. Good manners, kindness, empathy, they feel like a burden sometimes.
They definitely can.
But the material emphasizes these are the things that carry real weight in the grand scheme of things. The goal is to guide ourselves by these principles, not get dragged down into purely transactional or dehumanizing ways of relating.
Okay, so that leads us to the final thought. You mentioned different kinds of authority, competence, wealth, status give you temporary rank.
Right, they make you number one in certain situations.
But what's the one type of authority, the one rank that lasts? The one that remains, even when you're not physically present?
That would be moral authority. The rank you earn through consistent kindness, integrity, generosity, good character, that's the authority people remember and respect long after the job title or the bank balance changes. And building that moral authority, that's a choice you make in every single interaction.
Competence is situational, but character endures. A powerful takeaway. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this today.
It was my pleasure. A lot to think about.